There was a interview that I was watching between
John Wood Jr.
and Tavis Smiley. John says that to him, Martin Luther King is the founding father of our America.
Dr. King, for me, was really the sort of founding father of the America that I know.
That is America post the I Have a Dream speech. You had the original founding fathers who put into motion the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution, which laid out the blueprint for a free country. Here along came Martin Luther King with his speech, which was its own kind of informal Declaration of Independence, as it were.
We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created.
The speech, which, by the way, was strategically written by MLK's communist advisors like Stanley Levison and Bayard Rustin, played to the patriotic sentiments of the American public so as to manipulate the populace into adopting a new interpretation of a more perfect union.
What we needed was a moderate presentation of the vision of the civil rights movement. That was orchestrated very beautifully by Bayard Rustin, and King put the icing on the cake with the I Have a Dream speech.
Dr. King, the deputy director of the march, the man who is credited in Life magazine with being the one who thought it up in the first place, is named Bayard Rustin. Rustin admits that he is a former member of the Communist League. Do you feel confident that he is qualified in every way to lead this movement?
I think Mr. Rustin is as committed to American democracy and as committed to the ideals of democracy as anyone at this time.
With almost surgical precision, with the help of the mainstream media, they managed to redirect the trajectory of our country down this road toward globalism and Marxism. Now,
these Marxian leftists get to decide to what degree is one living up to this dream or not.
These Memphis second graders are keeping his legacy alive.
School children are impacted by these new Marxist gatekeepers and interpreters insofar that they have their hands in public school curriculum. And so when we look at what's going on in Florida right now, what we see is that any curriculum that does not have the blessing of these gatekeepers are demonized as anti-progress and a threat to MLK's so-called dream. For example, Spike Lee literally said,
by virtue of Florida passing this curriculum, that's an example of us not living up to Martin Luther King's dream.
We're trying to aspire to a dream, but we've not reached there, what Dr. King talked about.
And he's right. Like, people don't understand how right he is. When you understand the nefarious means by which that speech came to existence to begin with, it was very disingenuous. It wasn't a genuine speech at all. But you hear both right and left quoting that speech as though it's this kind of monumental, kind of sacred document.
50 years ago,
one of the tactics communists would use is they would oftentimes try and co-opt the legacies of America's figures.
A great American in whose symbolic shadow we stand today.
One of their tactics was to try and connect their point of view and their motives to men like Abraham Lincoln, George Washington, as opposed to, say, Marx, Engels, Lenin. Make it seem as though you are in line and in lockstep with the American tradition. There's a difference in what the founders were doing and what King was doing. King was a direct betrayal of our founding values, and he knew that. He was very conscious of that.
People should ask themselves, why his dream? Why his vision? Out of all the pastors in America, why is it that Martin Luther King's dream was the one that was chosen to be the one that will be the new kind of founding document of modern America? It wasn't that he was especially more moral than other pastors. We know that Martin Luther King was a perpetual drug user and a serial adulterer. We also know from his personal papers that he wasn't really a Christian. He didn't even believe that Jesus rose from the dead, which is a basic tenet of Christianity. This is precisely the reason why Martin Luther King was placed on a pedestal by the mainstream media, who themselves were secular progressives who hated religion. Martin Luther King is the limitless credit card in the purse of the government to be utilized in the electoral marketplace each and every time they wish to expand their power all the more. So this is who Martin Luther King is, and this is what his legacy serves to do. Expand the role of the government in a covert way in the name of progress. If you're a Christian, we have the Bible. We have the Sermon on the Mount,
where Jesus said that, you know, do unto others as you will have them do unto you. Like we have the perfect teacher in terms of how we ought to deal with one another. We don't need this speech. Martin Luther King's speech has nothing on the Sermon on the Mount at all. But to a lot of people, I understand that it does, because they just take the speech at face value. And so again, when you listen to Spike Lee sitting in that chair saying that we are not living up to the dream, that's the reason why you have these quote unquote black Republicans who are trying to backstep, because they agree with him. They agree with Spike Lee because they hold Martin Luther King as a standard. They hold the speech as a standard. They hold the civil rights movement as a standard. They haven't been challenged with the information that we present here on Cutting Through the Culture and on our individual platforms, the four of us on this panel. They haven't been challenged with the narrative that we speak, which is a narrative that's based in truth. They have succumbed to the kind of inundative, overwhelming, pervasive, prevailing narrative that we all have been taught in our schools. And for me, I'm not impressed that you just believe the same thing that we all have been taught in our public schools. I mean, that doesn't impress me. The fact that you have Tim Scott and others sitting up there just saying the same things that we've all been taught and told, that's not impressive to me at all.
As we follow this form of mass action and strategic nonviolence, we will not only put pressure on the government, but we will put pressure on other groups which ought by their nature to be allied with us.